I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to actually do something that would be carbon negative, which is how I came up with MyCoffin. And I'd like to say that I'm innovating the hell out of agriculture.
That's Max Justice from Setas Eternal Living, makers of 100% biodegradable coffins made from mycelium and industrial hemp. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock. On today's show, I will be talking to Max about his journey into mushrooms, which ultimately led him to hemp. We'll hear about that journey. It's a tale of healing, and it's full of entrepreneurial spirit. Max and his wife run Setas Mushrooms. It's a mushroom farm in Greencastle, Pennsylvania, where they are also producing the first hemp mycelium coffins made in America. So all that and more on today's show, including a handful of hemp news nuggets, right after these messages. Today's show is made possible with generous support from I&D Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana, where they believe in the goodness of hemp. I&D Hemp is a family-owned, mission-driven industrial hemp company focused on feed, fiber, and fuel, bringing new opportunities to farmers in Montana and across the U.S. Check them out at indhemp.com. This episode is made possible with support from Aspirations Cast Hemp, Pennsylvania's premier hempcrete building company and distributor of the E-Reezy spray applied system. Learn more at aspirations.com. And today's show is also made possible with support from Forever Green, distributors of the KP4 hemp cutter. Learn more at hempcutter.com. And a quick shout out to our friends over there at King's Agri-Seeds, where Sarah Mitchell is ready to take your hemp seed order. Check them out at kingsagriseeds.com. Okay, welcome back. So here we are. It's the first week of February. We just had Groundhog's Day here in Pennsylvania. Apparently the groundhog saw his shadow. So apparently we have 6 more weeks of time, and then something else happens. Anyway, thankfully January is behind us now. There's a lot of news in the world right now, and a lot of it is bad news, but not all of it. Here, I've got a few bright spots for you this week. Here in Pennsylvania, Governor Shapiro announced the recipients of agriculture innovation grants, and it turns out that there's some money for hemp here. And we happen to know some of the people who are getting it, so check this out. Cedar Meadow Farm in Lancaster County, that's Steve Groff's farm, they're going to get $63,000 to develop a hemp/flax planter. Over in Berks County, our friends at the Pennsylvania Industrial Hemp Council will receive $50,000 to plan a bio-based industrial campus. And up in Lackawanna County, a company called Bast Lab Processing will get $400,000 to build a hemp processing plant. So I think this is all fantastic news. The news a couple weeks ago about freezing of federal grant money. At least there's some money flowing anyway. So congratulations to these recipients. This is great. I know it just means that you have a lot more work to do now. I am really curious about Bast Lab Processing because I don't know them yet. But anyway, I will be talking to probably all of these folks at some point in the next few weeks or months and hear about their plans for this grant money. So there you go, some bright news from Pennsylvania. Oh, here's something. This was sent to me from Sarah Mitchell over at King's Agri-Seeds. But there is an open comment period right now for USDA dietary guidelines. And I think they're looking for comments about hemp seed in the dietary guidelines. So I've got a link up on the show page for this episode. So go to it and leave your comments there for the USDA. All right, and this one, maybe not good news, but it's news anyway. On last week's show, talking to Chris Boucher, about Sutter County shutting down all of their hemp operations. Here's a story from the Sacramento Bee. The headline reads, "Unfazed and confused, Sutter County extends ban on industrial hemp despite grower pushback." So the Sutter County supervisors on Tuesday voted 4-1 in favor of the ban, with the chairman, Dan Flores, the lone vote against it. So yeah, way to stick to your guns, Dan. Their vote did not permanently ban industrial hemp production in the county, said County Administrator Steve Smith. But supervisors may entertain a more long-term decision on the crop sometime this year before the extension expires. It's a very small industry, and with the problems associated with it, I just don't see how it could be worth it, said Supervisor Jeff Stevens. I would like to just see the whole problem go away, he added. Yeah, there you go. Sutter County, California, not the epicenter of hemp in the universe. So you can find links to all of that stuff on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. All right, let's go talk to Max Justice about mushroom coffins. Max Justice from Setas Mushrooms in Greencastle, Pennsylvania. Welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing?
Thanks, Eric. I'm doing very well and glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been covering hemp in the space for a few years now, and I haven't seen anything like what you're doing. So once I learned about what you're doing, I had to schedule this interview. So am I saying that right? Setas Mushrooms?
Very, very close. In fact, there's a lot of people who butcher it way worse. It's setas.
Setas, okay.
Yeah, and
Setas mushrooms.
That's the proper Spanish pronunciation for mushrooms.
Oh.
So we're just saying mushrooms.
Mushrooms. All right, cool. All right, so why don't you first give us a brief introduction of yourself and a little bit about your mushroom company.
Sure. So one of many things I'm actually very proud of, as you can see, the name there, Dr. Justice. Just got my PhD last year, so still somewhat new to getting accustomed to that title.
All right. Well, congratulations. That's a big deal.
Yes, it was. So thanks, Eric. Appreciate that. I'm also the chairman of Setas Mushrooms, which basically means I don't do a whole lot except for talk on these conversations. And educate a lot of people, as well as I'm also the CEO for Setas Eternal Living, Setas Eternal Living was spawned out of Setas Mushrooms. And I use this word spawn as a good pun.
Yeah, right. And so that's what we're talking about today, because Setas Eternal Living is a maker of a biodegradable coffin made from mycelium and hemp herds, which is super cool. So I've learned a lot about hemp herds, but I don't know too much about mushrooms. So why don't you first tell me how you got started in mushrooms, and then eventually we'll talk about how you got to hemp.
Sure. So 7 years ago, I almost lost the love of my life. She had a massive hemorrhagic stroke. And while we were in Fairfax Inova Hospital for over a week and they were pumping her full of drugs, she was having multiple headaches at a time, and she just wasn't mentally healthy. In fact, so while we were there, I was just starting my PhD journey. What does a good PhD student know to do? Research. And I found a 5-year DARPA study. Now, DARPA is the Advanced Research Agency of the DoD. And I happened to spend a little time in the intelligence community, as well as I'm a former Marine and Army soldier. And one thing I've learned through those various careers is that DARPA doesn't do anything for 5 years unless there's not some merit to it. And this was a 5-year DARPA study by a gentleman by the name of Paul Stamets. And Paul really is our industry leader in the mushroom world.
Yeah.
And he went on in this study to show how lion's mane is a neurotropic, meaning it's one of the few substances known to humanity that you can ingest that helps promote the growth of brain and nerve cells. So I'm like, hey, let me give this to the love of my life and see if this can help her. Now, we never ate, never did anything with mushrooms whatsoever. In fact, when I came up to her and said, "Hey, will you try some mushrooms?" She thought I was cuckoo. Uh, and she used some other choice words. But I convinced her to take these little lion's mane capsules. And within 3 days, she noticed a cognitive improvement. And she also stopped taking those big pharma drugs that actually made her want to kill herself. So, because of mushrooms, I still have the love of my life. And she understands the power of mushrooms as well, which is why she started growing them. And then, next thing you know, we are in a business where we are uh, selling mushrooms at local farmers markets. And it's just been a booming business ever since.
Wow, that is an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I know like I talk to a lot of farmers and I ask them to describe their farm, it's sort of a, it's outside. Can you describe your farm? And it's inside, isn't it? Do you have caves and things?
Yes, not only is it back inside, but it really has multiple rooms. In fact, there you go. There is my mushroom farm right there.
Okay. It's just for
And
folks who can't see that, he's got
the,
a nice spread there. So it is just audio, but
okay, thanks.
yeah.
So yeah, the barn, it's 50 by 100, was built in 1911. So you can take something old and make it new again, as they say. And we have six fruiting chambers inside our barn, as well as not those fruiting chambers aren't individually climate controlled. They are for humidity, but not necessarily for temperature.
Hmm.
But we have several different grow rooms and incubation rooms and fruiting chambers. So inside my barn, I have six mini splits ranging from 18 to 36,000 BTU.
Wow.
You can imagine it's a great deal of electricity I go through every month.
Hmm. All right. So you have mushroom farms. You're growing a wide variety of mushrooms, and I imagine you're selling into local restaurant markets and things like that.
Yes, in fact, we are very proud to say that you can find us in many fine establishments in the DC Metro, Baltimore, and Pennsylvania regions.
Cool. Okay. And you're out in Greencastle, PA, which is what, Franklin County, a bit west of Gettysburg?
Uh, Correct. Straight south on 81 from Harrisburg, just north of Hagerstown, Maryland. So, right on the intersection of I-81 and I-70, which really is a great place to be for anyone that wants to start a business.
Yeah.
In fact, so I mentioned I spent a little time in the intelligence community. While I was in the intelligence community, I did a great deal of research of where I wanted to live in life and why. And really, this intersection of I-70 and I-81, I could have lived anywhere in the world, but I chose here because really it's a great place for commerce. And in fact, the number of Amazon warehouses are popping up left and right around here.
Yeah. Yeah. Say goodbye to that farmland. Um, so what's your PhD in? Are you a doctor of mushrooms now?
So actually, no, it's not in mycology. My PhD is in technology and innovation management.
Okay.
And I'd like to say that I'm innovating the hell out of agriculture.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Talk about some of your innovations in agriculture.
So, one of the big is my coffin. Now, I call it my coffin not because it's my personal coffin. My wife hated it whenever I said that. I was always calling it my coffin. And she's like, "Would you stop it?" And I said, "My love, I can't. Because really, this is a mycology coffin, hence my coffin." And that's why how I came up with the name my coffin was because of the fact it was a mycology coffin.
Okay. So the word mycelium, mycology, explain that. Like, is when we say mycelium, is that just another fancy word for mushrooms or fungal growth, or what is that?
So mycelium, that is the fungus. Now there are more varieties and species of fungus there are plants and trees combined.
Wow.
Now mycelium actually is found in many graveyards. In fact, when you go to a cemetery and you bury someone, if you look just below the lush green layer of grass, you can often see a very thin white line. And it's that thin white line that is mycelium. And there is more mycelium that covers this earth than just about any other living thing.
Wow, that's incredible. So, how did you then make the jump into making hemp coffins? Like, how did you decide on hemp?
So 2018 was not really the my best year. 4 months after I almost lost the love of my life, and we're still at home recovering, my little sister very suddenly died.
Oh,
And at the time, she would have been 42 years old. Well, she's not the first person, unfortunately, that I've had to deal with an end of life situation in my family. In fact, I've had several members of my family that had to bury or deal with over the years. And while we were at the funeral procession up in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, so it was right up in the center of the state, I asked the mortuary director, I said, "Hey, I'm just a curious kind of guy. What kind of filter do y'all put on the flue stack?" He just laughed at me. He said, "We don't put a filter on the flue stack." So, in other words, every time we turn something or someone into a crispy critter, it goes up the flue stack for the rest of us to breathe in.
okay.
So when I think about the last act that my little sister and I agreed we were going to do, it's really not one of the most environmentally friendly. In fact, after doing some research, found out just really how horrendous cremation is when dealing with the end of life and sustainability and renewable efforts. So once I found out that how bad cremation was for the rest of us, I said I made it. I wanted to find something different. I personally didn't want me or my family to have to continue to do bad things to this earth. In fact, burying someone in a steel coffin, which chances are that person that's in that steel coffin is going to be full of embalming fluid. Well, that embalming fluid, when it leaches out, and it will, because everything over time will break, and that means that all of those chemicals and the contamination of my family members have leached out to the earth. So between cremation and burial, I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to actually do something that would be carbon negative, which is how I came up with with my coffin.
Okay. Um, did you prototype other things before you landed on hemp, or how did you get to hemp?
So actually, it was I learned from another organization. There is an organization out of Holland called Loop Biotech, and they actually were growing coffins about 10 years ago. So I've only been growing, and I do proudly say that I grow coffins. And I'm simply modeling what Loop Biotech was doing a little over 10 years ago. And so I took what I could garner from publicly available information and then went through a lot of trial and error. I even tried growing some urns and found out figured urns is maybe not the best direction for me to go, especially if I'm looking at this from a green perspective. So I stuck with coffins. In fact, as a small business, you want to stick with one thing and you want to do that one thing very, very well, if not better than anyone else. Well, since no one else is growing coffins, let alone producing gre carbon negative coffins, right now I do that better than anyone else. So pretty excited to really stick to that one product.
Okay. Well, can you explain the process? You said you grow them, so I imagine like is it kind of a mold that you put a mix in and then let it kind of like bloom, or how does it work?
So you started down the right path, but you were also about halfway down that path. So mushroom farming and growing coffins are very, very similar. In fact, we do the exact same process. We have a mycology laboratory in our indoor vertical mushroom farm. And we start at the petri dish or at the liquid agar. And we take that petri dish with agar, or we take the liquid mycelium, and we will introduce that to our grain, of which the mycelium grows out or colonizes on the grain and becomes grain spawn. Then we take that grain spawn and we introduce that to our substrate. Now, in growing a lot of our gourmet mushrooms, we use sawdust, soy hull, uh, as well as some other products, even rice for one of our mushrooms. But for this particular effort, we use hemp. And I chose hemp because it's a carbon negative material, meaning it sucks carbon out of the air. And really, what I need, that hemp hurd, that more woody like structure, that's the center of the stalk. And really, most people don't even want that. In fact, I've got several farmers that grow their own hemp for the CBD oil or what have you. And after they've taken the bud and they've stripped off the fiber, well, then they have the hemp hurd left, and they were just going to take a match to it. So I'm actually taking something that we were going to burn and turning that into an alternative to which we put back into the ground, which is actually good for the soil.
Yeah, I'm curious about that process, how you are um, processing the hemp stalks to get the herd.
So right now, I'm unable to do mass uh, create that in mass volume.
Okay.
So I do cheat a little and I go buy the hemp herd from Old Dominion Hemp. They make it in 33-pound bales.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes about 90 pounds of hemp herd that we stick into our mold. And I do have various size molds for pet coffins and human coffins.
Wow.
And so we once we go from back on to the process, we go from the mycology laboratory into the grain spawn, then into the substrate. It sits on the shelf for about 3 weeks, where that substrate fully colonizes. Then once that substrate, where that hemp substrate has been fully colonized with mycelium, we then take that out of the bag and we break that hemp herd or that colonized hemp herd up and we stuff it into our mold. And then 5 days later, we've grown a coffin. Now, growing a coffin isn't quite as easy as I've just made it out to be. You have to have the right temperature, the right humidity, and even then, you may not always have success. So we are still refining our process, and I look forward to the day when I can get a good mold. We've made our own molds mainly out of plywood, OSB, two by fours, and foam, as well as a little plastic. What I'd really like to do, and what I'm looking for investors on, is so that way I can get foam, or excuse me, injected molding molds of
Mm-hmm.
our coffins,
Right.
and it would vastly help with our production process.
That's cool. I wonder if you could get those molds to be made from hemp as well. You could be double hemp.
Uh, if that exists, I would love to do it because I really want to do away with all plastic within our environment. That's the one thing, that's the one part of our entire farm operation that I'm really not happy with is the amount of plastic that we
Mm.
use
Right.
in growing our mushrooms or growing our coffins.
Yeah. All right. So tell me a little bit about sort of compare and contrast your mycelium coffins to like conventional, like price wise. How do they compare?
So price wise, I am very happy to say that I'm extremely competitive. Now, if you go to a funeral home, chances are a coffin's going to start somewhere around $5,000 and quickly go to 20, if not even higher. My coffin, I'm currently selling for $2,495. And ultimately, I'd like to get to the point where I'm able to not only mass produce but mass produced in such a way that it helps the end or the family who's actually acquiring or purchasing my
Hmm.
coffin, because ultimately I'd like to get to the cost of my coffin to the consumer down to $495. So a
Wow.
sub $500 coffin is my goal, and I really think I can get there.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that would be a game changer for like the funeral industry, right?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. We're already there at the game changer. People are starting to realize that we need a greener option for burial because what we're doing, it's just not sustainable in any stretch of the means. Whether it's a steel coffin, which, by the way, 80% of the steel that we get for our coffins comes from China. So that in itself is brings up 50 other issues. And then there's other biodegradable options for burial, like wood. In fact, you can get a very beautiful handcrafted wood coffin from, say, the Amish or Mennonite,
Hmm.
and you can get that for around $500. But that's one of the only places that you're really going to be able to find an expensive coffin.
Yeah.
Now, there are cotton wraps, and those cotton wraps, in fact, there used to be one that was made uh, with mycelium put into it. Luke Perry from 90210 was buried in one of those cotton wraps with mycelium
I didn't even know he died.
about 15 years ago or so.
No one tells me anything.
And I'm still trying to figure out emojis. So, I'm right there with you. But the cotton wrap, come to find out, that's really not a really green option for burial, and it also uses a tremendous amount of water.
In the cotton production.
Um,
Yeah.
yes, whereas I've done a carbon footprint and water usage analysis of my coffin compared to the others, and my coffin uses the least amount of water of any form of burial, and it is the only carbon negative option for burial. I'm begging for other people to learn how to grow coffins because, frankly, we collectively, you and I, and everyone listening to this, we need more people to do this. So I'm begging for competition. I hope that I have lots and lots of competition.
All right. Well, listeners, you heard it there. He's throwing down the gauntlet. This man needs some competition. So let's get some more hemp coffins out there.
Very good. Perfect.
Um, does the mycelium in the coffin sort of speed up the decomposition process?
A great deal. I've already done a couple of real world, I hate to say use cases, but some may call it that. It was about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, I buried one of my chickens in a small pet coffin, a small pet coffin. And after a year, I exhumed the chicken, and all I found were two vertebrae and two thigh bones. That was it, or two vertebrae, two thigh bones. Now, uh, about shortly thereafter, my dog Rabbit, who was a bull mastiff, he also passed away. And so we buried him in the lid to my coffin, which means they took my coffin and cut it in half and we buried him in between. Well, this coming August, in August 2025, will be 2 years where we had to unfortunately bury my best friend Rabbit, and we're going to exhume him.
Mm.
And all I expect to find is a little bit of metal that was on his dog collar. I fully suspect that even after 2 years, even the teeth will be biodegraded.
Wow.
So with that, I tell people that my coffin is designed to biodegrade and return the body naturally to the earth of a human in under 3 years. Now, do I have any actual proof? No, but I have a great deal of research showing that 3 years is quite possible, as well as on the complete outside, we're looking at less than 10 years for complete breakdown. And even if I was to say 10 years for complete breakdown, it would still be the fastest way to naturally return the body to the earth.
How do you market these? Like, how are you reaching out to, the, I'm not sure, what do you call the community of recently? Yeah, I don't know. Explain how you market.
Sure. So the death industry,
Yeah.
as it's known, boy, it's they're a unique group of characters. Marketing to them, that's actually not my strong suit, which is exactly why a couple of weeks ago I was able to ink a deal, bring on my first investor, who happens to be our chief marketing officer. And Johnny Parsons is my chief marketing officer, and it is her job to go out and market MyCoffin effectively. Now, I originally started thinking of this as a direct to consumer, but really, Johnny has enlightened me that really this needs to be a B2B play. So straight to whether it's the mortuary, the cemetery, and in some cases, or the funeral home, or wherever else. So really, I'm going to be targeting companies like Passages, one of the largest, um, uh, I think I would say producers of, well, no, they're not the largest producer of coffins. They own more funeral homes
Mm,
than any other public or private organization that I'm aware of. So
okay.
Passages is a great organization. So if you're with Passages, I would love to have a conversation with you as well as my marketing officer.
Okay. Um, I mean, obviously, I don't know much about the death industry. Is there any kind of equivalent of like, you hear about big pharma or big tobacco? Is there big death, and like, are you disrupting an industry here?
Yes. So there are a couple of key players, Thacker Caskets, as well as Bates Coffins. In fact, they have their Batesville Coffins. They actually have in Batesville, Maryland, is where Batesville Coffins are manufactured. So I'm actually playing in their backyard. Batesville Coffin manufacturer is less than an hour away, and I'm not even sure if they even know about me yet. Uh, and chances are, when they do, it's going to be a little too late for them because you have when you grow coffins or you're bringing a green solution, it's completely different than their existing business model.
Mm,
And whether it's Batesville, Thacker, or others, they're bringing steel coffins to the table. And frankly, the steel coffins, that is meant to keep a body preserved as long as possible. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. And by the way, please no mafia characters. I don't need your phone call. But my coffin is designed to biodegrade the body in the least amount of time possible. So it's completely going to disrupt the industry and not just in the vessel that a human body is to go in, but also the land at which we deal with. Because now, if instead of putting a coffin into the ground for several hundred years, we're talking about potentially at a maximum of 10 years, and then that one plot can take on another body, and that could
oh,
happen multiple times. So you're talking in the matter of 3 or 4 generations of a family, you could have 5 or 6 people buried in the exact same spot. So this truly would be a family plot type of situation than several plots, as well as then much like you can rent or lease a coffin for a funeral. I would, one of the disruptions that I will be bringing to the industry is that you would rent or lease a plot, maybe from me. In fact, I'm working with a couple of organizations to help bring innovation to Pennsylvania, and they're the ones that brought this idea up to me. They're like, "Hey, you should really think about leasing plot space." And at first, I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" And after a little bit of thought, I started thinking, "Hey, this actually does kind of make sense."
Yeah.
And really, I think that's going to be a good option for a lot of the funeral or a lot of the cemeteries that don't currently have green burial sections or space designated for green burial.
Right. Right.
If I or others could come in and buy up, say, 20 or 30 spaces in a cemetery in the corner, to which I would then sublease those spaces or those plots, uh, that would be really a win-win for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's really kind of mind blowing to think about that. I wonder about um, so maybe like the theological reasons for wanting to keep the body intact as long as possible in the ground. I don't really understand that. Like in my own sort of world, I would want to be soil as soon as possible. But I don't know. Um, yeah, I don't. There wasn't a question there. That was just a comment, I guess.
Well, actually, that's a really good comment, and like there's so many. I hate to say this, but it's misperceptions, like whether it's theology, and I love to study theology. In fact, I'm an ordained minister, and I'm not aware of any theology that wants the body to actually stay in the ground for a very long time. In fact, it's quite the opposite. In the Jewish community, they want you in the ground in within 24 hours, and no preservatives in the body. Within the Muslim community, we're talking about 3 days, and also with no preservatives in the body. So really, this is more of a Western society type thing,
Yeah.
as well as I hear a lot of people, especially I was at the PA Farm Show, showing off MyCoffin just a few weeks ago. And this one woman came up to me and said, "Hey, isn't it legally required that a person go in a steel vault, or excuse me, a steel coffin or a concrete vault?" And I called all 67 counties in Pennsylvania. Not one of them said that it's a requirement in this state for an individual to be buried in a concrete vault or a steel coffin. Those
Hmm.
are all individual cemetery based. Now, there are some places like, let's say, the city of New Orleans, they have to bury above ground. But
For
in Louisiana itself, they do not have a law requiring that everyone is buried above ground. So
hmm.
every state is slightly different. Uh, but really, when it comes to what goes inside the ground, I haven't found any law on any books for any state showing that my coffin wasn't a viable option.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so how many do you have out there? How many have you sold? Do you have like an inventory, or do you make these kind of like, you get an order and then you have to make it quick?
So a little bit of all the above. I've sold to date. We've only sold four. Now, to be honest, I didn't start selling these until last summer. Beginning of last summer, we had our the first person buried in my coffin. It was Dr. Sabibi out of New Hampshire. And I wish I would have met the gentleman. We sounded like we were a lot alike. Anyways, in fact, News 8 in Lancaster did a beautiful segment on my coffin, and they actually brought in Dr. Sabibi and his family into the story. Very touching story. So if you
Yeah.
get a chance, please check out the Susan Shapiro with WGAL TV8 did a wonderful job.
Okay. I will put a
And
link to that story on the show page for this episode so listeners can find it too.
great, thanks, Eric. Appreciate that. And so we that was I only had one coffin at the time. Sold him the one coffin, or sold the family the one coffin I had. Now since then we have grown. I probably have at least 8 or 10 coffins that are readily available. Um, so we were growing them for the individual at the time, but most people don't want to wait 5 days or actually a week because after the 5 day growth, then I got to stick it into a clean room where it grows out for one day, and then the seventh day we put it into an oven and we petrify it for 18 hours.
Oh,
So
okay.
really, it's a week time frame from the time that we stick it into the mold till the time that its product is ready. And most people don't want to wait a week. They typically, like most people, humans, especially Americans nowadays, everybody wants it now,
Yeah.
which is why I have 8 or 10 on hand. But really, I'm expanding our storage. I want to keep at least 50 on hand because if I want to make waves, if I want to make a difference, if I really want to disrupt, then I have to have our product ready
Yeah.
for the need or for it to be seen.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like I caught you just in the beginning of your liftoff story. So this is great. Hopefully, maybe after people hear this, people will be dying to buy these coffins. No, too soon. I'm sorry.
Yeah, very good. Nice. I appreciate that, Eric. Actually, that's I try to bring a little humor to the subject when and where possible, because often when we're talking about end of life, it's now, hey, Dad or Papa Joe or whomever has just died.
Hmm.
And they're not looking for some lightheartedness. So you're dealing with very serious situations. And plus, people don't like to talk about it because they get into this dark state. And frankly, I think we need to be a little bit more humorous about it and talk about how the stupidity of burying people in steel coffins, and we need to do that regularly. And we need people to laugh and say, why on earth did I do something so stupid?
Yeah. Well, I mean, death is such an important part of life, right? It kind of, it's the punctuation mark there. Um, let's talk a little bit more about hemp. So, I've been covering hemp for years and years. Um, are there any like pain points in your hemp supply chain? Like what um, what could make that sort of hemp side of your thing easier for you?
Uh, so you hit the nail on the head earlier, Eric. It really is being able to take the remaining stock with the fiber on it and processing it down to the herd. If I can do that, well, as you can see, not all of your viewers or listeners can see, but I've got a nice little piece of land around here.
Yeah.
On 1 acre of land, I can grow, I forget what ungodly number of pounds, if not tons of hemp that I can grow. But I don't need the female version of hemp. The male version is actually much better. So we're talking stalks that are packed in like six per or one per every 6 inches that can grow 18 to 20 feet tall. It's not like there's a lot of agriculture equipment that can deal with harvesting that hemp. And that's just the harvesting part. That's not taking it down and stripping away the fiber, taking off the bud. So to get around that big challenge I have, I partner with several. I was going to partner with several hemp growers, which they would gladly give me their hemp for free. In fact, I've got several tons of it underneath my barn
Mm.
that ends up going into my compost pile instead of going into one of my coffins, just because I really can't deal with the going from the plant to the hemp herd. So if I could find whether it's a solution to get me there, an investor that can help me get there, or I can go through a third party somehow that would take this free hemp that I can get and turn it into hemp herd at a
Mm.
reasonable rate. Because frankly, Old Dominion hemp, they're selling the bags at $33 or 35, $33 for a 30-pound bag.
Okay.
So I don't even need 90 pounds. So less than 3 bags is all I need to grow a coffin.
Hmm.
So the supply chain's there, but I'd say it's from the agricultural perspective that we're really challenged. And you probably know even more about that than I do.
Yeah, I've been covering it for a while. So you talked about like the male and the female varieties and the flower. You don't need that. Um, there are varieties of fiber hemp that you even chop before it even goes to flower. Um, so I think I can put you in touch with some other suppliers of hemp hurd, and maybe they can beat those prices for you.
Oh,
Um,
nice. That'd be great. Thank you.
yeah, and also I would guess that some like the quality of hemp hurd varies from plants. Like if you're getting hemp hurd from CBD plants, it might be a whole world apart from some of the hemp hurd that is processed for, let's say, building material or things like that. But yeah, there's some folks in Pennsylvania. There's no processing capacity in Pennsylvania just yet. So there's
Mm.
nobody where you can take your stalks to and get them processed, and then you get your herd. From what I understand, that's going to change this year. There's going to be some sort of investment into that infrastructure. But there's a pretty vast network of processors sort of out in the Midwest and the further west
Mhm.
that, yeah, I can connect you with. Um, and I imagine too, after we publish this, you might start to hear from some people. So who knows?
Great. Love it. Thanks.
Yeah. So I'm curious, is there any part of your story that I didn't ask you about that you would like to talk about?
Well, um, i- if you were to ask me what's been my biggest challenge, it's really overcoming the the beliefs that most people have. Whether it's from legal requirements, which there are few, to the religious or theological understanding. It's a subject that a lot of people just don't like talk about. And I've had, even at the PA Farm Show, people would run away from me because they're just so scared to talk about death.
Hmm.
So my biggest challenge really is educating and getting people to want to talk openly about this subject.
Yeah.
And so thank you for bringing me on today to have this open conversation.
Absolutely. I'm curious too if you're connected with any of the sort of associations that are out there. I know there's the Pennsylvania Hemp Industry Council, sort of more localized. There's the National Hemp Association. There's the NIHC. There's a few sort of groups that might be able to help you out. Um, just curious if
Uh,
you're connected at all with those.
So from the hemp side or the hemp industry, I'm not well connected. I'd love to have more connections. In fact, when you reached out, I got excited. I was like, yes, another, that is a great industry to be involved in, especially because that's what goes into our product. We have two things that go into our product, hemp and mycelium. That's it.
Yep.
Well, and water. So three things. But so I definitely need more con more network or more touch points, more integration
Hmm.
into the hemp industry. Now, as far as the death industry goes, I'm definitely getting well established. In fact, we've been in the cemetery and mortuary newspaper,
That's
which they
exciting.
actually have newspapers. And one reason is because of the people in the industry. They tend to be baby boomers and older. Hint, hint, younger generation, there's an opportunity for you. But so they don't do a lot of digital. Because of their age and demographic, they still do the newspaper. As well as we are members of the Green Burial Council. In fact, we've received the Green Burial Council's highest rating of 3 leaves, which we're very proud to achieve that certification, especially right out of the gate. It was just fabulous to get that such a tremendous certification, as well as we have a certification for green business and the green business, I think it's network,
Okay.
that we've also achieved their green business certification.
Yeah, cool. It sounds like you're making inroads there. Getting back to something you said earlier, you mentioned like these beautiful handmade Amish coffins, and I'm curious about art and design and how art and design play a role in your coffins. And I'm curious too if people can make, I don't know, like customizations to the coffins.
A great question. In fact, I'm thrilled that you asked me this one because it was when you talk about art and design, I had our first coffin that I grew. It was more just like a rectangular box, had a flat lid, flat sides, and I was like, eh, we can do better. And it was about 2 years ago or so. In fact, it might have been a little bit, roughly 2 years ago. I was sitting on the couch, getting ready. Just fired up a movie called Black Panther's Wakanda Forever. Right before that movie came out, we lost a great actor, Chad Boswick, I believe is his name. So the Black Panther Wakanda Forever had a tribute to Chad in the very beginning stages of the movie, where his coffin like lifted up with him in it and went up into outer space. But as soon as I saw the coffin, I reached up, jumped up out of my chair. I was like, "That's it! That's my coffin!" So a great deal of respect for art, uh, design, and beauty. I very much would like to get my coffin more um, tailored or customizable, if you will. Right now, the only customization that we offer, besides small, medium, and large for pet coffins and human coffins, we have adult and infant size coffins. We offer a choice of color. We have a milk paint that we use. So milk paint is 100% biodegradable paint, and it gives a really nice, like an crackled egg texture to the coffin. So again, paying a little homage to art, design, and culture. I think we took a lot of inspiration from those three aspects.
Yeah. All right. Well, Max Justice, it has been a pleasure talking to you today. I learned a whole lot about hemp coffins. One final question. Would you ever consider growing hemp yourself?
Oh, I'd love to. In fact, I planned on doing it a year ago, but because I just don't have the equipment to do it, I do have a local farmer that I can team up with that has grown hemp previously, but there's still a cost associated with it. But then he's going to farm it. He wasn't going to be able to produce it or break it down in that herd that I really need.
Right.
So I would love to be able to do it. And if anybody knows how I can do it, wants to partner with us in ensuring that we can do it, I would love to have that conversation. And one thing's for sure, I know that success never comes alone. And because of talking with you, I get to potentially meet others who are interested or maybe even go that extra step in getting involved. I need a great deal of people to get involved if we are going to really disrupt the death industry like I think we need to.
Amen to that. Yeah, cannabis loves community. So, yeah, it's great to meet you, Max. And I'll put your contact info on the show page, and so people
Great.
can go there. And yeah, I really look forward to sort of watching your success. And I'm glad I caught you at the beginning of your rise. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. You're just a little over an hour away. We got to have to get you down to the farm and show you in person how we grow our coffins.
Yeah, we can send our video crew too, and we can
Oh, I would love
shoot
it.
some video.
Absolutely.
All right.
And I do have one plug. Uh, Besides the URL, setaseternalliving.com, on 12 April, Setas Mushrooms and Setas Eternal Living is holding Setas Mushrooms second annual grand feast.
Okay.
And we are feeding 1,000 people dinner for free. So we'd love for anyone of you it's in your audience that are listening on 12 April, put it on your calendar. It's a week before Easter. Please come to our farm. Last year we had over 24 vendors. This year I'm trying for 50.
Wow.
We had over a half dozen food trucks for those that didn't want a mushroom main dinner. But we got five gourmet chefs. Two of them are Michelin rated, and they are cooking dinner for 1,000 people to eat on me. So I
Wow.
would love to have you and your audience come have dinner on us.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for that invitation. We'll put a link to that on the show too. So let's keep in touch on that. So, Dr. Max Justice, thank you so much for your time today. Congratulations again on your PhD. Very exciting. And congratulations on everything. And I wish you good health and success in the coming year.
Thanks, Eric. You as well.
All right, there you go. That was Max Justice from Setas Mushrooms and Setas Eternal Living. Check them out online. I've got the link on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. You heard us talking about the medicinal properties of mushrooms, but of course you know well enough that you should consult your doctor and not get medical advice from a podcast about industrial hemp. All right. So my name is Eric Herlock. I am the senior digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online at lancasterfarming.com. Yeah, all right. If you have any questions or comments from me, you can send them directly to podcast@lancasterfarming.com. And if you've already written to me and I haven't responded yet, be patient with me. There's a lot going on. All right, there's a lot going on behind the scenes here that you have no idea about. But I'm going to be filling you in on some things as we move through this year. All right, so what else? That's it. All right, until next time, I'll see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
This episode of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2025 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written, recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock with production assistance from Sophia Curzons. The music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Timber Shadow.